Hello, my name is Marina Caldwell, and for years my own brother has mocked me, reducing me to nothing more than a waitress. He thought my silence meant weakness, that I had no power left after being erased. But what he never knew was that I carried a truth only 3 words could reveal. At a glittering gala under the eyes of senators and generals, those words in French turned the room cold, and for the first time, the world saw me. The Embassy Gala glittered like a stage of marble and gold, yet I wore the black uniform of service staff. My brother's voice cut across the hall. "That's my sister. Just a waitress." I kept my gaze on a glass rim and let their amusement pass like sleet. The quartet stitched a hush over marble. Chandeliers cast small galaxies across tuxedos and medals. I moved as a current. No one noticed a shadow with a tray and a pulse I kept under glass. In my jacket, a thin plate of brushed steel pressed into my sternum, a private talisman that reminded me who I was beneath the costume they mistook for rank. Adrian thrived in bright attention. He angled his shoulders for imaginary cameras, lifted his drink, and pitched his voice to travel. He bragged like power were a scent he could spray. Dropping it for effect, Senator Langley is watching. Polite laughter rewarded him, the soft cruelty of people pleased to be entertained. I slipped behind him, invisible by design. His smile widened, certain he had defined me with a line and an audience. General Harrison Cole stood near the dais gravity in uniform. Beyond the orbit of aides, Leonard Hargrave skimmed the room's edge like a patient bishop in mid-game. The tell came as light bent in a fresh flute. A young aide poured from a bottle that should have been lighter. The meniscus bulged, then settled too cleanly, the way surface tension tells the truth when hands will not. The flute moved, palmed, and passed, and came to rest in the general's hand. My breath measured 3 counts. A donor took the last glass. The tray became a mirror. I turned it enough to catch a reflection, the aide's profile, the satisfaction of a tidy errand. No one stopped me. No one ever stops the help. I stepped inside the ring of security with ease of being beneath notice. Adrian's voice followed, sticky with performance. "Careful, she spills." I didn't look back. Cut crystal rose toward the general's mouth. Light fractured over insignia. I leaned until breath bridged the distance and gave him what mattered, 3 quiet syllables, in a language he trusted more than ceremony. "Don't drink that." The glass hung. His eyes found mine, winter blue, trained to harden under pressure. The quartet played. Conversation flowed, yet the air thinned as if a window had opened to weather no one else could feel. He lowered the flute and placed it on linen with the care reserved for live wires. Aides stilled by instinct without knowing why. Hargrave's gaze skimmed past, too smooth. I kept my hand still and let the silence speak. Chosen silence isn't absence, it is authority. His voice drops to a whisper. "What's your call sign?" I meet his gaze and answer cipher. The music swelled behind me as I slipped into a side corridor. Silence pressed in, and with it came memories sharp as glass, the day they erased me. The sound of applause and strings bled faintly through the walls, muffled by velvet curtains and plaster. I leaned against the cool marble tray forgotten at my side and closed my eyes. The corridor smelled of polish and dust, nothing like the ballroom's expensive perfume. It was a space between 2 worlds, one where I stood unseen, another where I had once been erased. 3 years earlier, the air was sterile, humming with fluorescent light, a white tribunal room clean enough to suffocate. 3 men in suits waited with folders, their faces blank with authority. They accused me of mishandling classified data, said a leak had occurred under my login. I asked for logs, evidence, anything. They shook their heads. "This is not an investigation," one said. "It's a discharge." At the back of the room sat Adrian. He wore ambition like a tailored suit, posture, perfect eyes carefully detached. He didn't defend me. He didn't even look at me. When the forms were passed down the line, he signed without hesitation, as though he'd been waiting for the pen. His silence was sharper than the accusations. Robert Alden, my colleague of 5 years, sat to his left. He lowered his gaze when I searched his face, choosing cowardice over truth. I carried a cardboard box out of that room, each step echoing like a verdict. Yet beneath the rage, a seed of suspicion rooted deeper. This was not incompetence punished, it was a removal orchestrated. Rain whispered on the roof of the Lake Elysian cabin when I found the box. The old stove shifted under my hand. Loose floorboards gave way to a lock my fingers knew instinctively. Inside lay a wooden case heavy with memory. My father's handwriting scrawled across a cassette label for Marina, "If the world forgets you." Next to it, a micro SD card wrapped in foil, a single word inked on its surface: ashes. His voice filled the cabin on the third night I dared to listen. Static gave way to the timbre I had almost forgotten. Justice will come late, but it will come. He spoke of shadows inside our own walls, data bleeding like veins cut open. He warned me not to lose patience. Each word sank like stone, anchoring me. Silence, he reminded me, was not weakness, but strategy sharpening itself. In the corridor now, I touched the earpiece beneath my hair. A faint click pulsed through the signal of Halcyon, the ghost who owed me a life. Hours earlier, I had sent him the corrupted audio begging for the missing 2 seconds. His reply arrived as a whisper drawn through wires and distance. The file began. Hargrave's voice smug and certain. She doesn't know enough to be dangerous, but too much to be kept. A gap, once silence, now restored. My brother's voice slid in, flat, deliberate. We bury her quietly, or the whole operation is compromised. The words cut through me like ice. There, it was not mockery, not indifference. Complicity. He had been part of it from the start. The corridor spun for a moment, then steadied. My hand pressed against the wall, not for balance, but to contain the tremor that wanted release. I breathed once, twice. Rage would waste me. Clarity would save me. I had proof now, hard as steel. Adrian had not merely dismissed me, he had chosen my erasure. Halcyon's voice followed, faint but urgent, in my ear. Langley's name surfaced in the metadata. He's been in it from the start. The weight of the empty tray steadied my hand. Tonight, I wasn't serving drinks, I was serving evidence. My father's words came back like a commandment. You don't need to shout. You only need to record. They had carried me through nights when silence felt like exile, and they guided my steps now as I drifted into the West Wing. Chandeliers burned low to amber mirrors multiplied every movement, and Strauss in a minor key leaked through the walls. Adrian thrived here, laughing too loudly, hand-cutting the air as he charmed defense brokers. His words landed sharp. My sister never managed the real work. She was always better at trays. His audience gave polite chuckles, satisfied at my expense. I let them. Mockery was a thin disguise for what was about to break. Hargrave entered, case in hand, his face calm as if consequence were a myth. A consultant in a cobalt tie met him halfway. The cases switched, seamless, almost elegant. Too easy, too rehearsed. The deception would have fooled anyone not trained to see weight shift in a handoff. I angled the tray toward a mirror, my collar camera catching the serials with cold precision. Beneath my cuff, my thumb tapped the analog watch 3 times, each tap a drumbeat. The response was instant, Halcyon's voice coiling into my ear. Marked. MPs inbound. I moved toward the bar, posture calm, when the hinges shrieked. The great ballroom doors slammed open, a phalanx of military police entering with boots hammering marble. Conversations splintered, applause died. Hargrave's confident smirk faltered for the first time. Confirm. Cipher authenticated. Robert Alden's voice, strong where once it had been silent, cut across the hall. The MPs closed in on Hargrave's steel cuffs, biting through his illusion of power. Gasps rippled outward, silks and tuxedos stiffening with dread. Hargrave struggled. I have clearance. His words were desperate, high-pitched. No one listened. General Cole remained still by the dais, his eyes fixed on me, unreadable but knowing. Adrian snapped like dry tinder. He lunged, trying to seize the case, shouting, "Wait, this is a mistake." The handle slipped through his fingers. The clasp gave way. The case spilled open on marble. Not just a drive. Access cards stamped with allied seals scattered across the floor, glowing like proof under the chandeliers. The room recoiled. A senator pressed her hand to her lips. A colonel cursed under his breath. Treason had been unwrapped in public. I walked past Adrian, leaned close enough for him alone. "You called me a waitress," I murmured. "Tonight I serve the audit." His face drained, stripped of its arrogance. The MPs pulled Hargrave upright, his protests drowned by the rising tide of whispers. The case remained open, its contents glinting like knives in the light. Silence was no longer absence, it was judgment. Then I looked up. On the balcony, Senator Langley stood half-hidden, pale in the amber glow. His eyes caught mine for one suspended moment before he turned, slipping toward a side exit with the smoothness of practiced escape. I pressed a finger to my comms. My voice steady. "Halcyon. I see Langley. The silence is only starting to break. Subscribe now so you won't miss the next truth when it whispers." The gala was over, but the night had only just begun. I sat in a cold security room overlooking the Potomac rain, streaking the glass like Morse code. My father's voice whispered back through memory, the cassette's static framing it like prophecy. "Justice comes late if you're willing to pay its price." The words pressed against me, as steady as the silver plate under my jacket. Tonight the price was finally being tallied. The command post was bare, just a wooden table, fluorescent light, and stacks of confiscated cases still dripping with the aura of scandal. Beyond the window, Capitol lights shimmered, blurred by the downpour. Each reflection felt like a clock counting down. Robert Alden sat opposite me, his hands trembling over a sworn affidavit. He had carried guilt for 3 years, and it showed in the sag of his shoulders, the cracks in his voice. I should have spoken. I stayed silent for a promotion. His pen scraped paper each stroke, undoing a piece of the silence that had protected Hargrave, Langley, and Adrian alike. He pushed the document toward me. His eyes were wet but steady. "I won't hide again." General Cole stood nearby, presence anchoring the room. He said nothing, but his mere weight gave legitimacy to every word Alden signed. For the first time, I felt the system bend in my favor. I opened the laptop, slid in the secured drive, and began uploading. Hargrave's case, the recovered audio, Adrian's voice damning him with his own words. Everything flowed into the transparency portal. Progress bar inching forward, percentage climbing. Then the screen convulsed. Error codes, red flashing DDoS. Another attempt to takedown notice citing national security. I almost laughed. They weren't protecting the country, they were protecting themselves. "Halcyon," I whispered into the comms. His reply came sharp fast. "Switching to mirror protocol. 3 dead man switches, independent media. If you lose power, the files still drop." Countdown timers appeared across my screen, numbers bleeding downward. 02, 59, 02, 58. The phone rang. Not my cell. The landline on the desk, its ringer slicing the silence. Cole lifted an eyebrow. I picked it up. "Ms. Caldwell," the voice drawled. Calm, deliberate. "Senator Langley. You have no idea what you're tampering with." I steadied my breathing. "I'm not tampering. I'm counting." I recited the release timestamps aloud, letting each digit hammer through the receiver. 02, 17, 02, 00, 01, 45. The line cut abruptly, but the message was sent. He knew the files would live beyond him. The portal flickered once more, then stabilized. The progress bar surged green. Files mirrored, encrypted, scattered to outlets that no subpoena could reach. For the first time in years, truth wasn't fragile. It was alive, uncontainable. Alden leaned back, eyes closing. "I wasn't loud," he murmured. "I was logged." The phrase landed heavier than any confession. He had paid his price. The door creaked. A security officer stepped in, boots slick with rain. He handed me a folded subpoena, the Capitol's seal stamped in red. Tomorrow morning. Emergency hearing. But clipped to the folder was something colder, a still frame from the parking lot cameras. Adrian, my brother, shaking hands with a shadowed figure. In the photo, he was slipping over a book I knew by touch, my grandmother's French dictionary. But wedged in its spine was no paper scrap. It was a chip glinting even in the grainy image. My throat tightened. The dictionary had taught me language, silence, meaning. Now it was being used as currency in a conspiracy I was only beginning to measure. Morning light washed the Capitol dome in pale silver. I walked into the hearing room, not in uniform, not with rank, but with a single tag of brushed steel pressed to my heart cipher. The chamber felt colder than marble, though oak desks and U.S. flags gave it gravity. Cameras blinked red, feeding a live broadcast across the nation. My father's voice seemed to echo from the cassette I had played so many nights ago. Justice doesn't arrive with thunder. It arrives when erasure ends. I sat still watching the procession. Robert Alden was first. He looked 10 years older than the man I'd seen sign away my career, but this time his voice carried weight. I stayed silent. He said, gripping his affidavit, and silence was complicity. His words cracked, but no one looked away. For the first time, his silence was gone. General Cole followed. He stood with the calm of someone who had nothing left to prove. Cipher authenticated, he testified. 3 words in French saved my life. A ripple of murmurs spread through the room, echoing into the cameras. His statement planted me firmly in the record, not as a discarded analyst, but as the operative who had stopped a general from being poisoned. Then, the screens flared alive. The footage played Hargrave's arrest, the mirrored swap, the case spilling open to reveal stolen access cards. Gasps filled the chamber. Then came the audio first. Hargrave's smooth voice, then Adrian's unmistakable words. "We bury her quietly, or the whole operation is compromised." The camera cut to the gallery. Adrian was pale, clutching our grandmother's French dictionary like it could anchor him, but fate didn't wait. The book slipped from his lap, crashing onto the marble floor. Gasps again. A technician hurried forward, lifting a small, blinking chip dislodged from the spine. Data scrolled across the monitors. The chip matched my father's archive. The conspiracy was no longer shadow, it was evidence carved in light. Adrian's shoulders slumped. He looked at me once, eyes empty of arrogance, full only of recognition that his ambition had hollowed him out. He had mocked me as a waitress. Now the world saw him as a traitor's accomplice. Langley erupted from his seat, voice-sharp fists pounding the desk. "This is manufactured." But his microphone cut. The committee chair hammered the gavel, each strike like a drumbeat of consequence. "Proceedings for indictment will begin." The room swelled with noise, but it was no longer mine to carry. I stood. The cameras caught my face. The cipher tag was warm against my chest. I spoke softly, my words threading through the chamber and into the millions listening. Justice doesn't roar, it whispers. Outside the glass walls, a child's voice rose, practicing French words with her mother. The sound drifted faintly inside like a ghost of my grandmother's lessons, reminding me that silence had always been my first language, and now it was the one that carried me home. I carried silence for years, and tonight I turned it into strength. If my journey touched you, I ask for your voice. Share your thoughts with me in the comments. Every word you leave is a reminder that no one stands alone when fighting for truth. What I've learned is simple. You don't need to shout to be heard. Steady persistence writes its own justice. In your own life, protect your dignity quietly but firmly, because whispers can reshape destiny.